There was already blood on the ledger when I woke up. Not mine, at least not all of it. My left sleeve was wet to the elbow, my head felt split behind the eyes, and I was lying on cold tile under a chandelier that cost more than the apartment building where I grew up. The room smelled like incense, gun oil, and old lacquer. Somebody had dragged a body out recently. You can tell by the shine. Marble remembers. I knew 3 things before I could sit up properly. First, I was in the upper residence of the Kisaragi estate, which was impossible because I had never been allowed past the public receiving hall. Second, there were men outside the door arguing in low voices about whether the heir was conscious. Third, my own name was wrong. Not gone. Wrong. I knew my name as Kai Marita, dockside runner, part-time mechanic, a full-time idiot where one girl was concerned. I knew the alley tea shop near the freight tracks, the shortcut behind the shrine stairs, the way rain pooled on rusted vending machines in South Ward. I knew the shape of Raina's hand when she used to tug my sleeve and tell me to stop picking fights I couldn't win. But when I looked down at the blood on the ledger and saw the signature dried there in black ink, I recognized the hand immediately. Akira Kisaragi. The stroke order came to me before the panic did. Family style, contract hand. The final hook on the last character cut short, same as the old patriarch in the public portraits. I had never written that name in my life. Outside the door, one of the men said, "If he's faking, cut the lights and test his pulse rate against the succession seal." The other answered, "I'm not touching him until Madame Sawa arrives." The last person who rushed to Kisaragi's succession room lost 2 fingers. That part strangely made me breathe easier. People lie about ghosts. They do not lie in that tone about seal injuries. I pushed myself upright, and the room tilted hard. There was a long, low table in front of me covered in black paper, 3 open signet boxes, a broken ceremonial blade, and a bronze bowl full of ash. The ledger sat in the center on a stand, heavy binding wrapped in iron thread, pages edged with silver. Succession record. I had seen one once from 30 feet away during a district arbitration procession. Never this close. My handprint was on the active page. No, not my handprint. The handprint the ledger currently believed belonged to Akira Kisaragi. I touched the edge of the page. The paper was warm. That was when the memory hit. Not cleanly, not like a scene replay, more like shards pushed under skin. A rooftop in rain. Raina's voice saying, "Just trust me one more time." Oh, her mouth shaking after she said it. A black car door opening, men in gray coats, a ring with the Kisaragi crest pressed into wax, a needle in my neck, someone laughing softly and saying, "The city likes symmetry. Let's see if it remembers you." Then light, white, surgical, Gyantu, too bright. A woman's voice, older, controlled, reading contract clauses while I tried to move and couldn't. A pulse in my chest that did not match my breathing. Pain. More voices. The smell of burned herbs and sterilizer. And then a sentence, spoken close to my ear by a man I never saw. "If he survives the transfer, don't let him near South Ward until the ledger names him." The door opened before I could stand. 3 men entered in fitted black suits with temple thread cuffs and visible sidearms. Kisaragi House security, inner floor rank. They spread automatically, 2 to the walls, 1 staying centered. All 3 were watching my hands, not my face. At the one in the middle had a scar through his eyebrow, and the posture of someone who had served one family long enough to stop pretending he had options. "Heir," he said, careful with the word, "do you know where you are?" That told me they were testing orientation before protocol. Either they expected head trauma or they expected something worse. I looked at the ledger, then at him. Upper succession room, East residence. His eyes narrowed slightly. Correct answer. He asked, "Your name?" There are moments when your whole future hangs on whether you answer honestly or correctly. They are not always the same thing. My mouth went dry. Akira Kisaragi. The left side guard exhaled, just once. The center man didn't. Family branch? The answer rose before I could think about how I knew it. Mainline, registered through House Matriarch Nozomi Kisaragi, 3rd Seal Revision. The center guard dipped his head a fraction. Understood. Inside, panic sharpened into something colder. I was passing. That meant either I had been trained, overwritten, or neither of those words was enough for what had happened. Footsteps approached in the hall, fast and precise. The guard shifted instantly, all three straighter. A woman entered without waiting to be announced. Madame Sawa looked like she had been carved for endurance and then taught to wear silk over it. Late 50s, silver thread hair tied back, charcoal kimono under a tactical overcoat, no visible weapon, which meant she was the weapon or standing close to it. I knew her face from district news and underworld rumor alike. Chief steward of Kisaragi Logistics. The aunt who never smiles. The reason half the city's black market ceasefires held longer than police curfews. Her eyes moved over the room once and settled on me. "Everyone out," she said. The guards hesitated only long enough to confirm she meant all of them, then left and shut the door. Sawa crossed to the table. Now checked the ledger page without touching it, glanced at the broken ceremonial blade, and only then looked directly at me. "Can you stand, Akira?" I pushed up using the table edge. The room swayed again, but I stayed vertical. Yes. Any missing vision? No. Numbness? Left hand comes and goes. Voices that aren't in the room? I held her gaze. Depends how bad this week gets. That almost earned something like approval. She took a slim metal case from her sleeve, opened it, and held out a glass ampule of clear liquid. Drink. Is it poison? If it were, I'd wait until you signed the inheritance annex. Fair. I drank. Bitter, medicinal, and cold enough to hurt my teeth. Heat spread down my throat and settled behind my eyes, cutting the worst of the dizziness. Sawa watched my pupils, pulse, and hands like a field medic checking a damaged machine. What is the last thing you remember before waking here? I could have lied. Instead, I gave her a smaller truth. Rain, a car, then fragments. Her face did not move, but she filed that away somewhere sharp. Do you remember the succession challenge? No, do you remember who drew steel in this room? I looked at the broken ceremonial blade on the table. Blood on the hilt, ash in the bowl, scorch marks on the floor lacquer near the far wall. This had not been a formal tea and signature ceremony. It had gone violent. No, I said. Good, she said. And that was the first openly strange thing she gave me. For now, that is good. I let the silence sit. People like Sawa will fill silence if they think they control the timing. It worked. The ledger named you at 312, she said. 3 claimants contested. 1 withdrew before blood seal. 1 failed recognition. 1 challenged succession validity under emergency clause and attempted seizure. She looked at the broken blade. The challenge was denied. Denied. Not he was killed. Not we defended the heir. Not an incident occurred. Ginu denied. Kisaragi language. Legal violence hidden in passive grammar. I asked, who challenged? Sawa closed the metal case. Later. Am I under guard or under arrest? You are under inheritance. I almost laughed. That's not an answer. It is in this house. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Listen carefully. The city will know by noon that the succession ledger opened and named a surviving heir. By dusk, every faction that ever took Kisaragi money, favors, roots, or protection will test whether you are real. Police, ward unions, shrine brokers, customs inspectors, loan syndicates, private militias, half the council offices pretending they're clean. Everyone. If you ask the wrong question in front of the wrong witness, they will smell the fracture. The word hit harder than the warning. Fracture. Not amnesia, not injury, fracture. A term for a person who doesn't line up with their record. I said, so something happened to me. Her expression remained controlled. Many things happened to you. We'll prioritize the ones that can get you killed before dinner. She slid a thin black folder across the table. Inside were printed sheets, handwritten notes, and a city grid map marked in colored lines. Routes, warehouses, front businesses, port gates, debt markers, names I knew from street talk and names I only knew from headlines, all connected to small black circles stamped with the Kisaragi crest. This was not inheritance in the sentimental sense. This was a command structure. The city's underworld did not belong to one family, no matter what stories people tell. It moved through coalitions, debts, protected corridors, shrine permissions, police blind spots, labor agreements, and mutual threats. But if one house held the central ledger on those obligations, then controls was not entirely the wrong word. I looked up. Why me? Sawa watched me very closely. Because the ledger accepted your blood and pulse. Because the old matriarch is dead. Because every alternate claimant is now invalid, compromised, or visible. Because the city's balance was built on Kisaragi continuity, and continuity does not wait for the heir to feel ready. None of that answered the question I meant. She knew it and chose not to answer anyway. I flipped through the folder, buying time. On the third page, clipped under a route manifest, I found a security photo. Southward rooftop. Rain glare on concrete. Me, Kai, facing a black sedan. Raina standing half a step behind me, hand raised like she was trying to explain something and failing. Timestamp, 22:41, previous night. I stared at the image until the edges blurred. Sawa saw the photo. You know her. Not a question. I made myself breathe once before answering. Yes. She delivered you. I closed the folder too fast. Paper snapped under my fingers. Why? She requested audience 2 months ago under a broker name we later traced to a debt intermediary. She claimed she could identify a surviving bloodline asset tied to the sealed succession dispute. We monitored. Last night she activated the handoff. A hot, stupid part of me wanted to say there had to be a reason. She was forced. She was protecting me. There was context. The colder part noticed Sawa never said sold. She said delivered. In this city, those words separate betrayal from transaction and transaction from strategy. I asked, is she alive? Sawa considered me for one beat too long. Yes. That was enough to hurt. Before I could ask anything else, the wall panel near the door buzzed and lit red. Sawa touched 2 fingers to the sensor. A filtered voice came through. Madam, Outer Council relay. They're pushing a public verification request. Also, Hayate Group vehicles spotted at North Gate and Canal 6. Sawa's eyes sharpened. How many? 8 visible, more on traffic cam blackout. She cut the line and turned to me. Yeah, your first test arrived early. Hayate. Rival logistics block, sometimes partner, sometimes war. They backed one of the invalid claimants. If they confirm you're weak, the ceasefire grid breaks by nightfall. I looked at the broken ceremonial blade again. You said the city tests whether I'm real. Yes. What if I'm not? Sawa's face stayed perfectly still. Then you learn fast and survive long enough to become real. She moved toward the door, then stopped and looked back. One more thing. Until I say otherwise, do not use the name Kai Morita in this house. The air changed around the sentence. Not because she knew, because of the way she said in this house, as if names had jurisdiction. I kept my voice level. Why? The succession rooms and ledger chambers listen for contradictions during first inheritance cycle. A wrong name declaration can trigger censure. Censure? Seal pane, motor lock. In rare cases, stroke. She opened the door. Welcome home, Anakira. Then she left me alone with a blood-warm ledger and a map of a city I suddenly had authority over and no trust in. I got dressed in somebody else's life. The wardrobe in the side chamber held tailored suits, ceremonial coats, plain black field clothes, and 2 drawer stacks of gloves lined with conductive thread. All size for me. Not Kai me. This body me. Whoever that difference belonged to. In the mirror, I still looked like myself mostly. Same scar under the chin from a bike chain incident at 14. Same left eyebrow notch from a dock fight. But there were changes I could not explain. Better posture by habit. Needle marks fading at the base of the neck. A thin line of pale scar tissue behind my right ear, like a surgical port had been inserted and removed. When I buttoned the black shirt, my hands moved with practiced speed over closures I had never used before. Memory shards, I told myself. Muscle borrowing from shock. The alternative was worse. A house attendant led me through corridors layered in old power and modern paranoia. Cedar beams, bulletproof glass, silent cameras hidden behind carved lattice, prayer tags tucked beside motion sensors. Kisaragi money had not chosen between tradition and surveillance. It bought both. Every servant and guard bowed the same depth. Respect, yes, but also measurement. They were checking gait, eye focus, reaction timing. Testing the new Heir without making it look like a test. On the way down to the central audience hall, we passed a locked bronze door marked with 3 overlapping seals. My throat prickled when I looked at it. The attendant noticed and quickly lowered his gaze. "What room is that?" I asked. He answered too fast. "Archive Annex, Heir." "Used for what?" "Restricted materials." I stopped walking. He froze 3 steps ahead of me, visibly regretting being assigned to this corridor at all. "Who has access?" I asked. "Madame Sawa, the late matriarch. Authorized ledger clerks, the Heir." That was the first useful thing he said. I kept moving. The central audience hall was already live when I entered. Not crowded, curated. Sawa stood at the head of the long floor, flanked by 2 internal advisors and a shrine broker in white-gray robes I recognized from municipal blessing ceremonies. Along the side walls, house captains, legal clerks, and armed retainers in quiet rows. No wasted people. Everyone here either moved money, violence, or paperwork that turned one into the other. At the far end, beneath the public Kisaragi crest, 3 representatives from the outer council sat in formal chairs with portable record tablets on their knees. Public verification team, as warned. Neutral on paper, never neutral in practice. And near the side entrance, hands in his coat pockets like he was waiting for a train instead of a succession hearing, stood Jun Arata, my first love's brother. Technically, former friend would be more precise. Jun and I grew up in the same South Ward blocks, ran errands for the same mechanics, skipped school on the same days, and learned very early which alleys belonged to which crews. He was the one who taught me how to spot a tail in mirrored windows. I was the one who took a pipe to the ribs when somebody came for him over a gambling debt he didn't owe. Then he disappeared 2 years ago and came back wearing tailored coats, talking like a fixer, never answering directly who he worked for. Seeing him inside the Kisaragi hall told me enough. He caught my eye and gave the smallest shrug, almost apologetic. I looked away before my face gave him anything. Sawa announced me by full house title. The room bowed. I copied the angle I somehow knew. Verification began with formalities. Bloodline acknowledgement, ledger opening time. Death notice confirmation for matriarch Nozomi, seal witness names. I answered where Sawa had coached and stayed silent where the clerks moved things forward themselves. The outer council representatives asked neutral questions in neutral tones, while their tablets recorded pulse and thermal drift through the floor sensors. Then they asked the one that mattered. "Under emergency civic stability provisions," said the senior representative, a woman with glass-rimmed lenses and no wasted movements, "does the newly recognized Heir affirm continuity of all standing Kisaragi protection agreements and corridor guarantees for the next 30 days? 30 days. Standard pressure window. Long enough to trap a weak Heir in inherited obligations. Short enough to call it temporary. Every eye in the hall shifted by a degree. I heard Sawa's warning in my head. The city will test whether you are real. If I affirmed everything blindly, I inherited every hidden leak and bad promise in a network I didn't understand. If I refused, the ceasefire grid cracked and Hayate would push before sunset. No safe option. Again. I looked at the representative and said, I affirm continuity of civilian corridor guarantees and shrine-protected routes immediately. Commercial and enforcement agreements are affirmed provisionally pending internal audit for 30 days. A murmur moved through the sidewall ranks before anyone could stop it. The representative adjusted her glasses. That is a split affirmation. Yes. On what authority? I met her eyes and kept my voice flat. Succession ledger emergency discretion under contested inheritance aftermath. You can verify clause language with your own archive if your counsel still keeps complete copies. That last line was a risk, slightly insolent, deliberately precise. The shrine broker at Sawa's side looked at me for the first time, like I had stopped being a mannequin and become a problem worth studying. The representative did not answer immediately. She tapped her tablet, likely checking whether I had just improvised legal nonsense. I had no idea if I had. My body did, or the memory fragments did, or Akira did, wherever that line now belonged. Finally, she said, "Recorded." Sawa did not smile. She looked almost relieved. The hearing shifted. Questions became narrower. Transit guarantees, debt enforcement freezes, harbor customs liaison continuity. I answered fewer, deferred more, and let the clerks carry what they could. Twice I caught June watching me with the expression of a man comparing two versions of the same map and not liking either. Then the hall alarms changed tone. Not loud. Worse. A soft double chime that signaled internal seal breach. Every guard in the room went still. Sawa touched the hidden receiver in her sleeve. Location. A voice answered through her earpiece, audible in the silence. Archive Annex. Door seal opened from Heir authorization. My throat went cold. And I had not moved near the archive door since the corridor. Sawa's head snapped toward me, not accusing yet, but calculating. The room felt the shift instantly. I said, "I didn't open anything." June spoke from the side wall before anyone invited him. "Then somebody just used your key print." Half the guards reached for weapons. The council reps started to rise. The shrine broker whispered a ward phrase and the wall lanterns brightened in response. Safe system failure, in public this time. Sawa cut across the panic like a blade. Lock the hall. Internal team with me. Heir stays in line of sight. I stepped down from the dais before she could order me twice. If they used my authorization, I'm coming. No. If the annex listens for Heir-level access, your team could trigger censure or scrub evidence. That got her attention because it used house logic, not bravado. June added, quiet and irritatingly useful. If this is a plant, they want the council to watch Kisaragi seals fail in real time. Keeping him visible helps them. Sawa hated agreeing with him. I could see it happen anyway. "Fine," she said. "You move when I move. Speak only if addressed. If I tell you to drop, you drop before asking why." The council representatives protested on procedural grounds. Sawa ignored them. The shrine broker, to my surprise, stood and said, "I will witness. If Heir authorization has been forged, civic record requires shrine observation." That settled it. Nobody wanted a later dispute on whether Kisaragi staged its own seal breach. We moved fast through the inner corridors. Sawa, 4 house guards, 2 legal clerks with portable record seals, the shrine broker, June, because nobody had time to remove him, and me in the middle of all of it, feeling like the city had decided my first day in power needed a live demonstration. The archive annex door at the bronze corridor stood open. Not forced, opened cleanly, and all 3 seals disengaged and hanging loose like cut strings. The guards at the scene were pale and holding position well back from the threshold. "Who entered?" Sawa asked. "Unknown," one guard said. "No visual. Cameras loop for 11 seconds. Door logged air pulse authorization at 11:22. He showed her a handheld tablet. I couldn't see the screen, but I didn't need to. My chest had started doing something ugly. An offbeat flutter, like the room from the succession chamber was still inside me and being tapped from a distance. Sawa noticed. "What is it?" "Pulse shift," I said, hating how uncertain I sounded. Like earlier, before I woke up. She looked at the open annex, then at me. Air level only then. We go in together. The annex was colder than the hallway and smelled of dust, ozone, and wet stone, exactly like the fragments from the transfer room memory. Shelves ran floor to ceiling, packed with bound ledgers, sealed boxes, relic cases, and old black paper files tagged in silver ink. In the center sat a low archive table lit by a single hanging lamp. On the table was a broken relic disc, bronze and jade, palm-sized, split through the middle. And beside it, a sealed letter with crimson wax stamped in a sigil I knew before I knew why. Arata family mark. June swore under his breath. Sawa's head turned toward him sharply. You know this seal. June's jaw tightened. It's my family crest. Old branch use, not public. The shrine broker stepped forward, careful not to touch the disc. Do not break the wax until witnessed and recorded. Too late for restraint. My pulse fluttered again, stronger, and the broken relic disc gave off a low hum like it had been waiting for me. One of the legal clerks whispered, emotion-fed replay type. Clue number 1. Sawa held up a hand to stop everyone. No one touches the relic. I was already moving, not by choice. The hum had shifted into something pulling, subtle but physical, like my sternum was hooked to a line only the relic could feel. I reached the table before the nearest guard closed the distance. Akira, Sawa snapped. My fingers brushed the broken disc. The room went white around the edges and then narrowed into a replay. Rain on steel roofs. A loading platform under North Canal. Reina standing under a broken floodlight, coat soaked through, face exhausted and furious at once. June with her, younger by maybe a year, blood on his knuckles. And me, Kai, stumbling backward while a man in a gray coat pressed a case into Reina's hands. The man spoke, but the replay carried emotion first, words second. Fear, guilt, urgency, betrayal wrapped around necessity so tight I could not separate them. Then the audio cleared. Gray coat. Deliver him before midnight and your brother's debt ledger burns. Fail and Hayate takes both wards. Reina. You said transfer, not succession. Gray coat. Don't pretend you understand the difference. Joan. If this gets him killed. Gray coat. If this city loses Kisaragi continuity tonight, thousands lose root protection by morning. Pick your tragedy. Reina looked at me, at the replay version of me, and said, voice breaking around the edges, Kai, listen to me. If I tell you to run now, they shoot June first. Then the image jumped, glitched, and shifted to another angle. A car door, a needle, my own arm pinned. Reina crying and still holding my hand steady so the injector hit clean. The replay ended with a stamp of grief so hard my knees buckled. I came back to the archive room on one hand, breathing like I'd sprinted stairs. Nobody spoke for a full 2 seconds. Then June said, hoarse, I told her not to let them use that disc. Sawa looked from me to the errata sealed letter to June, and in that moment the whole room's geometry changed. Reina had not simply sold me. Hayate had coerced the handoff. June knew pieces of it. And the errata seal in the Kisaragi annex meant the betrayal was connected to a hidden channel between families, one somebody had tried to surface today in front of witnesses. A planted break-in? No. A message. Time to the public verification. Clue number 2. The shrine broker spoke first. Controlled and formal because everyone else had started bleeding emotion into the air. The relic replay has been witnessed. Letter remains sealed. Next action must be recorded. Sawa's eyes never left June. Why is your family seal in my archive? June swallowed once and failed to look casual for the first time in years. Because my father worked Kisaragi Black Records before he disappeared. Because Hayate's claimant wasn't chasing your money. He was chasing a buried succession file tied to a transfer protocol. He looked at me, and whatever he saw there made him stop trying to protect me from the wording. Kai, Akira, whatever name survives this. You weren't just found. You were prepared. The room went silent again. But this time it wasn't shock, and it was alignment. Too many pieces clicking at once. Sawa spoke like she was writing the next hour in her head, while the city lit fuses around us. Seal the annex. Record every face present. No one leaves house grounds without my order. Clerk, witness the errata letter. Broker, you stay. June, you speak now, or I hand you to internal custody before Hayate's next move lands. June laughed once, thin and tired. That's the problem, madam. The next move already landed. He pointed toward me. At first I thought he meant the replay, the pulse shifts, the forged authorizations. Then I felt it. A deep, synchronized vibration through the archive floor, traveling from the succession wing all the way into the annex shelves. Not earthquake, system response. Somewhere in the house, a sealed mechanism had recognized something new and started opening. The attendants outside began shouting. A guard's radio burst into overlapping voices. Sawa's receiver lit red again. She listened for 1 second and went still in a way that scared everyone more than shouting would have. "What?" I said. She looked at me with the expression of someone who has just had a theory confirmed at the worst possible time. "The Underledger chamber," she said. "It opened on air pulse." I frowned. "There's another ledger." Her answer came flat. "There is the public succession ledger, and there is the city ledger." The archive lamp flickered. The broken relic disc on the table hummed once more, almost satisfied, and the sealed errata letter sat between us untouched, red wax unbroken, like a witness waiting for someone to finally decide which truth would cost less. The archive lamp flickered. The broken relic disc on the table hummed once more, almost satisfied, and the sealed errata letter sat between us untouched, red wax unbroken, like a witness waiting for someone to finally decide which truth would cost less. Nobody in the annex moved for a breath. Then the house started reacting. You can always tell what a family fears by which alarms it gives names to. The first tone was internal breach. The second was succession irregularity. The third, the one rolling through the corridor now in low triple pulses, wasn't listed in any public Kisaragi emergency memo I had ever heard rumor of. The guards knew it anyway. Every one of them went from protect the principal to protect the mechanism in the same second. Sawa turned to me. "You are done touching relics without permission." I didn't mean to trigger it." "I know." She looked at the broken disc, the sealed letter, then at June. "That is what worries me." She started issuing orders faster than most people think. Clerk 1, seal witness log and duplicate off-site. Clerk 2, stay with the broker and document the letter opening chain. Guard team split. 2 on the annex, 2 with me. June stays in sight. Heir comes with me. The shrine broker lifted a hand. The errata letter was found in a live archive breach. It must be opened with civic witness before displacement of evidence. Sawa's eyes cut toward the pulsing corridor lights. If the Underledger chamber stays open unescorted, we may not have a house left for your witness protocol. The broker didn't back down. If you move on a city ledger while suppressing found evidence tied to a rival claimant, you create grounds to invalidate every action taken under emergency discretion. Even in a crisis, bureaucrats can draw blood. Osawa stared at him for 1 beat, then adjusted. "Fine. Open it here, now, recorded. Read only. No one leaves with the original." She nodded to the legal clerk, who snapped on a portable record seal and announced time, location, witnesses, and chain condition in a clipped voice that somehow made the whole thing feel more dangerous. The broker broke the red wax carefully. June flinched when the crest split. Inside was a single page and a narrow strip of black film clipped to the top. Memory strip. Not relic grade, but enough to carry a visual imprint or coded access line. The broker unfolded the page and read in a neutral ceremonial voice that gave the words more force than emotion would have. To Chief Steward Sawa, should this packet surface before formal petition, the succession conflict currently affecting Kisaragi continuity concerns not only bloodline legitimacy but the concealed transfer registry attached to the Underledger system. Hayat actors have obtained partial knowledge of a survivable vessel protocol. and are pursuing activation through forced claimant substitution. If Akira Kisaragi is named, verify body memory divergence immediately and restrict all unsupervised access to city ledger routes. Do not trust any authorization event logged during first inheritance cycle, if witnessed only by house systems. He stopped. The annex was so quiet I could hear the record seal ticking. Sawa said, "Signature." The broker scanned the bottom. Unsigned, countersigned with an errata branch seal and municipal notary mark, old style, likely authentic. June stepped closer despite the guard at his shoulder. "Show me the film." Sawa almost said no. Then the corridor alarm pulsed again, and she made the practical choice. The broker handed the black strip to the clerk, who held it under the annex lamp. Tiny silver characters ran along the edge. The clerk squinted. "It's not a memory strip. It's an access phrase imprint." Sawa held out her hand. "Read." The clerk swallowed and read the imprint aloud exactly once. "North spine, third stair. Say, no city runs on one name, at the Iron Gate." The words landed hard in me for reasons I didn't yet understand. Not memory, not exactly. Recognition in the body. A root phrase. Clue number 3. Sawa folded the letter herself, tucked it inside her sleeve, and looked at June with open hostility now sharpened into use. "When were you going to tell me your family sat on a warning about my house and the city ledger?" June gave her a tired, bitter look. "When you stop treating every errata with a pulse like a future witness to their own arrest. You don't get to be wounded after bringing your sister into a handoff." His face changed at that. "I didn't bring Reina in. I tried to get her out. Hayate had my debt chain, then they had my mother's clinic permits, then they had names from South Ward, and they kept narrowing the choices until every option was betrayal of somebody." No one in the room looked satisfied with that, including him. Sawa cut him off before it became confession theater. "Save the rest. If the underledger chamber opened on air pulse, we are out of time." She turned and moved for the corridor. We followed. The route phrase worked. Down the north spine corridor, past the armory alcove and the lacquer screen room, there was a narrow service stair concealed behind what looked like a decorative wall panel. Third stair landing had an iron gate inset with old shrine nails and modern magnetic locks. It should have been impossible to open without a key sequence. Sawa reached for the lock plate, then stopped and looked at me. "You say it." "Why me?" "Because if the letter is right, the underledger is reading your body before our hardware. If I use my keys and the house systems are compromised, we trigger a false escort protocol." A beat. "And if the phrase fails, I'd rather know now." I stepped up to the iron gate. Up close I could see scratched names on the inner bars, old and faint, maybe clerks or guards who had stood here years before and needed proof they had existed. My pulse was misbehaving again. I said, "No city runs on one name." The shrine nails vibrated once. Then the magnetic locks clicked open in sequence from top to bottom with a sound so clean it made everyone behind me straighten. June muttered, "That's not a house root phrase. That's a civic balance line." Sawa heard him and filed it away without comment. Inside. The stairwell below was older than the rest of the estate. Black stone and copper rails damp with cool air rising from somewhere deep. No cameras. No modern fixtures beyond emergency strips clipped in later. Somebody had deliberately kept this route off the visible security grid. As we descended, the triple alarm dulled into a low mechanical thrum. Not loud now. Constant. Like a giant press idling underground. I counted landings to keep my head straight. 5, 8, 11. At the 12th landing, the stair opened into a circular antechamber lined with lockboxes and brass plaques. In the center stood another door, thick ironwood banded with silver, marked not by the Kisaragi crest, but by a city seal I recognized from old ward permits and shrine tax notices. Concentric streets around a central river line. Above it, engraved in plain script, Municipal Continuity Ledger Authorized Custodial Access Only. I looked at Sawa. "This is city property." "Was," she said. Then war years happened, council blocks collapsed, and continuity duties were privatized in pieces no one publicly admits. June gave a humorless sound behind us. So the Underworld didn't take the city subcontracted itself. Sawa ignored him, which was as close to agreement as he was getting. The door was already open by an inch, and bronze light breathed through the gap. Sawa signaled the guards. 2 moved wide. 1 checked the floor for pressure seals. The other swept the frame with a handheld scanner. It chirped twice and returned a warning line that made him pale. "Dual authorization residue," he said. "House Heir and unknown external imprint." Sawa's eyes narrowed. "How recent?" "Minutes." So we weren't alone. She drew a compact pistol from inside her coat and held it low. June noticed and almost smiled despite the situation. "Didn't think you believed in guns," he said. "I believe in endings," she replied. We entered. The city ledger chamber looked less like a vault and more like a control room built by people who worshipped paperwork. Concentric shelves, stacked root ledgers, debt tomes, shrine covenant binders, customs records, labor pacts. Blackmail archives probably disguised as arbitration notes, all circling a central platform where a vertical bronze spindle rotated slowly through a basin of shallow water. Thin strips of metal and paper, tags, root tokens, seal slips moved up and down the spindle in precise rhythms, sorting and resorting themselves. At the far side of the platform, 2 figures stood in front of an open registry cabinet. One was a man in a gray raincoat, broad-shouldered, face calm in the way professionals keep calm when they have already accepted casualties. I recognized him from the relic replay. The other was Reina. For half a second, the room narrowed to her face. She looked exhausted. Not stylized, not tragic in a neat way. Just wrecked. Eyes red-rimmed, hair tied back badly, knuckles split, a bruise darkening along one cheekbone. The girl from the tea shop and the rooftop was still in there, but life had been using her hard. She saw me and stopped breathing for a beat. "Kai," she said. The nearest guard snapped his weapon up. "Hands where I can see them!" The gray-coated man moved first, not for a gun. He slapped a seal tag onto the open cabinet door and yanked a ledger cassette free from the slot. Sawa fired. The shot cracked through the chamber and hit the cabinet edge, showering sparks. The man twisted, shielded the cassette with his body, and kicked the bronze spindle basin. Water surged across the central platform. The chamber reacted instantly. Root tags along the spindle snapped loose and spun outward in a storm of metal slips and paper seals. Half the emergency strips blew out. The guards cursed and ducked as razor-thin brass tags whipped through the air like thrown cards. Safe system failure again, but this time because somebody knew exactly how to break it. "Down!" Sawa shouted. I dropped behind a ledger shelf just as a tag sliced the wood above my shoulder and buried itself vibrating in a beam. Gunshots in a ledger room sound wrong, too sharp for a place built to manage secrecy. The gray-coated man was moving through the tag storm like he'd practiced in this exact chamber. Reina wasn't. She got clipped across the forearm by a spinning brass token and hissed, losing grip on something in her left hand. It skidded across the wet floor toward me. A signet key. Not Kisaragi. Hayate crest. The gray-coated man saw where it went and changed direction toward my shelf. June crashed into him from the side before he got there. I hadn't even seen June move. 1 second he was behind Sawa, the next he was in the center chaos, shoulder driving into the man's ribs, both of them slamming into a route table hard enough to flip it. Ledger tags and seal slips burst into the air. Reina shouted, "June, no!" The gray-coated man hit him across the face with the ledger cassette and went for the signet key again. I grabbed it first. The moment my fingers closed on the Hayate signet, the city ledger spindle changed pitch. Not because the key was magical in the flashy sense, because it was recognized as an active root authority token and my pulse was already inside the system. A line of bronze script lit across the central basin rim. Conflicting claim present root. Master key unpaired request custodial resolution. Everyone saw it. Sawa's voice cut through the gunfire and metal storm. Heir, do not pair that key, the gray-coated man shouted over her. Pair it, and the city routes stay open. Raina, still clutching her bleeding arm, yelled, Don't listen to him! Too many commands, too little context. Familiar problem. I stayed low and looked at the signet in my hand. Hayate crest. Warm from someone else's grip. Wet from the basin spill. On the inside edge, engraved so small you'd miss it in a hurry, was a route code. C6, red/south bypass/emergency labor canal 6. One of the first Hayate vehicles reported approaching house grounds. Emergency labor route. They weren't here just to steal a ledger. They were trying to seize route authority during the succession window and present it as stability management if Kisaragi faltered. Strategic coup through logistics, not a street war. Very on brand for this city. June and the gray-coated man were on the floor now, fighting ugly and close. Not cinematic. Elbows, palms, knees, people who know each other's bad habits. The gray-coated man drove a blade from his sleeve toward June's throat. June caught his wrist with both hands and barely stopped it. Raina moved to help and a guard swung toward her. I heard myself shout, Don't shoot her! Everyone ignored me, but the guard's angle shifted enough that Raina got clear and kicked the blade wrist sideways. The knife punched into the floor instead of June's neck. June headbutted the gray-coated man hard enough to break his nose. Yet the chamber spindle was spinning faster now. Route tags clattering against the basin rim. Bronze script lines multiplied. Custodial delay risks district lockout. North, canal, south routes, pending pair, or reject conflicting key. Sawa saw the same thing I did. Heir, decide now. This was the city's real throat then. Not guns, not title, routes. If the ledger locked pending key conflict, corridor guarantees could fail across multiple wards before sunset. Ambulances, labor shifts, shrine supply deliveries, black market medicine runs, food convoys, everything that moved through tolerated gray channels would seize while factions argued legal standing. The gray-coated man bled from the nose and still found breath to call out, Hayate can hold the roots cleaner than a fractured heir. Pair the key and negotiate after. Raina turned on him with a look I had never seen from her before. Pure contempt burned down to function. You'd starve South Ward by morning if the numbers worked. He smiled with blood in his teeth. Only if it taught the city obedience. That answered enough. I stood. Not because it was brave. Because the ledger basin had started pulling at the signet in my hand, and if I stayed crouched one more second, I'd lose the timing. Sawa shouted something. A guard moved to cover me. Joan rolled clear from the gray-coated man and hit the floor hard, gasping. I stepped to the basin rim and pressed the Hayat signet against the bronze script line without seating it. The spindle slowed just enough to listen. Custodial resolution, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Conflict key acknowledged. Temporary route authority denied. Emergency route continuity preserved under split affirmation and succession audit. The room held. Then the gray-coated man laughed despite the blood. That's not a valid city ledger clause. Nice try, Heir. Maybe he was right. Then my body moved before my doubt could. My left hand, still numb on and off since waking, lifted and tapped 3 points on the basin rim, in a sequence I did not know I knew. North, canal, south. The bronze script changed. Conditional custodial override accepted by legacy. Municipal discretion audit window. 72 hours conflict key impounded. The Hayate signet burned in my hand and locked itself magnetically to the basin rim under a bronze clasp I hadn't seen open. The spindle stabilized. Across the chamber, route tags settled from a storm into ordered rotation. Emergency strips flickered back one by one. The metal howl dropped to a mechanical hum. For 3 full seconds, nobody spoke. Then the gray-coated man's face finally lost composure. No, he said, low and sincere. That authority line was sealed. Sawa stepped forward and put the barrel of her pistol on him before he could rise. Apparently not well enough. Guards moved in, disarmed him, pinned him, and sealed his wrists with black restraints keyed to house lock codes. He didn't fight once it was over. Men like that only waste motion when the odds can still be shaped. Raina stayed where she was, one hand on her cut forearm, chest rising too fast. She wasn't under guard yet, because everybody in the room was still recalculating what had just happened. June got to his knees, spit blood, and looked at me like he was seeing the old alley version and this house version stacked badly on top of each other. Sawa did not look confused. She looked furious in a focused way. "Who taught you municipal discretionary taps, Ya?" she asked. "I don't know." "That sequence is not in-house training." "I said I don't know." The answer came out sharper than I meant. She accepted it anyway because the basin was still displaying the override record, and facts outrank ego when systems are live. The shrine broker and clerks arrived a minute later, pale from the gunfire echo and the steep stairs. They took one look at the chamber scripts and started recording everything at triple speed. The broker read the basin lines aloud for the record, then looked at me with cautious respect and professional concern. "Legacy municipal discretion is pre-consolidation law. It should not have accepted under private custodial succession unless the heir carries registered civic imprint." Sawa's gaze shifted to me again. "Add it to the list." The gray-coated man finally spoke to me directly as the guards hauled him upright. "You think you won, Heir? You just proved the vessel protocol worked." The room went cold around the phrase. Sawa stepped closer and hit him once across the mouth with the pistol grip. "Not rage, correction. You will use plain words in your statement," she said. He smiled through blood. "Plain enough. Your heir isn't just Akira Kisaragi. He's a transfer success." Raina shut her eyes for a second, like hearing it spoken in the chamber made something official she had hoped to delay. June swore softly. "Shut up, Toma. So the gray-coated man had a name." Toma looked delighted to be identified. "Go on, June. Tell them which family sold the first technical notes. Tell the heir who drafted the compatibility lists. Tell him why Hayate was chasing old Kisaragi bloodline scraps in South Ward to begin with." June lunged, and the guards checked him hard against a shelf. "Enough!" Sawa snapped. "Take him upstairs. Isolate. Medical only until statement seal." They dragged Toma out, still smiling. Silence settled in stages after that. Clerks recording, broker reciting, guards sealing evidence. The city ledger spindle turning like nothing had happened, because systems are shameless that way. Then Sawa looked at Raina. "You ran a coerced handoff," she said. "You entered house grounds on rival operation. You were present at an unauthorized city ledger access. Give me one reason not to chain you to the North Cells." Raina met her eyes, exhausted and done pretending she could talk her way out clean. Because I can tell you who wrote the vessel protocol update after your old matriarch's death. Because I know which council office is backing Hayate's claim push. And because if Akira, whatever you want to call him, is starting to recover municipal taps, he's going to get hit with memory recoil in waves. And the only people who tracked his pre-transfer markers were us. Sawa's expression didn't soften. It sharpened around the edges. Why would Hayate track pre-transfer markers if they intended a claimant substitution? Raina looked at me before answering, and that hurt in a simpler way than all the chamber politics. "Because they weren't sure he'd survive intact," she said. "And if he came back wrong, they wanted to know which parts they could use." Nobody had a good response to that. Sawa chose motion over reaction. "She stays under house custody. Separate from Toma, June 2. No shared contact until statements are sealed. And," she turned to me, "you're coming with me." I looked at the city ledger basin, the impounded Hayate signet clamped under bronze, the root line still rotating in orderly bands, and realized the day wasn't ending. It was just changing rooms. On the way back up, the memory recoil hit. Not dramatic. Worse. Functional. I touched the stair rail on the 9th landing, and suddenly knew, with complete physical certainty, how many people it takes to reroute emergency medicine through North Canal when port inspections lock after midnight. I knew which shrine wardens accept delayed offerings if labor routes are documented under flood exceptions. I knew the price spread between legal fuel and black fuel in a strike week, And which council offices pretend not to notice if the right corridor guarantees hold? None of that was Kai's life. None of it felt fake. And I stopped walking so hard the guard behind me almost ran into my back. Sawa turned immediately. What? I held the rail until the wave passed. I know things I shouldn't. She nodded once, as if confirming a forecast she hated. Record them later. Do not chase them while standing. June, hands sealed in front restraints, gave me a sideways look. Welcome to inheritance. I wanted to hate him in that moment. It would have been easier. Instead, I just kept moving. By evening, the house had split into 3 wars disguised as procedure. Publicly, Kisaragi issued a controlled statement. Succession verified, an attempted interference event contained, corridor guarantees stable under temporary audit measures. Calm language for a city already buzzing with armored cars and rumor channels. Internally, Sawa locked half the estate systems off house-only keys and suspended any authorization logs generated by automated seal witnesses during my first inheritance cycle, exactly as the errata warning letter advised. That alone told me she believed the warning more than she wanted to admit. Below that, in rooms I wasn't shown but could feel moving around me through messengers and sealed files, people were already fighting over what the words vessel protocol meant in legal terms. Medical transfer, ritual succession, identity fraud. All of the above, if you were being honest. Near midnight, Sawa finally brought me to a smaller office off the east courtyard with reinforced shutters and no decorative anything. Just a steel desk, 2 chairs, 1 kettle, 1 wall of lockboxes, and a recorder seal waiting on the table. She closed the door herself and sat across from me. No clerks, I said. No audience, she corrected. This is not testimony, this is triage. She poured tea for both of us. It tasted like smoke and medicine. For a while, she asked practical questions and wrote by hand while I answered. Pulse episodes, memory gaps, a body pain, names I recognized, clauses that surfaced, root habits, which words caused the worst reactions. It felt less like an interrogation than a mechanic diagnosing an engine that might explode, but is too important to shut off. Eventually, she set the pen down. Now the question you've been trying not to ask since the succession room, she said. I looked at her. Did Kisaragi do this to me? She did not answer immediately. When Matriarch Nozomi was alive, she said, the house maintained a sealed contingency project tied to disputed succession continuity and municipal custodial authority. I opposed parts of it. I was overruled. After her death, the project should have been frozen pending tribunal review. Instead, pieces leaked. Hayate acquired technical notes through intermediaries we did not identify in time. Errata, yes, or someone using errata channels. Did Nozomi choose me? Oh, Sawa's face was unreadable for long enough that the answer arrived before the words. No, she said at last. She chose a model, not a person. That landed worse than I expected. A person can hate being chosen. A model can't even claim surprise. I laughed once, quietly, because the alternative was putting my fist through her desk, and that would only hurt me. Kai Marita, I said. Dockside runner, bad grades, good hands, wrong debts, first love with worse judgment than mine, and somewhere in a file I never saw I'm listed as compatible vessel candidate? Sawa didn't flinch, likely in colder words. I looked at the tea and then at her. Why tell me any of this? Because you already triggered legacy municipal discretion in the city ledger chamber. Because hiding facts from you now increases system risk. Because if Hayate's operation is this deep, someone will try to frame your fractures as incapacity before the 72-hour audit window closes. She leaned back slightly. And because you asked the right questions in public. I prefer my heirs difficult. Your heirs? Figure of speech. Was it? For the first time that day, she almost smiled. A knock came at the door. 2 short, 1 long. House code. Sawa unlocked it with a sleeve tag and took a sealed note from the guard outside. She read it once and handed it to me. Short line, internal script. Southward labor route disruption reports increasing. Canal 6 families requesting direct air assurance. Crowds gathering at Old Freight Shrine. I stared at the note. Old Freight Shrine was where Raina and I used to leave coins before exam results and bad jobs. Half superstition, half habit. It sat right on the edge of legal and illegal routes, which in this city meant it saw trouble before officials admitted trouble existed. Sawa watched my face, not the note. You know that shrine. It wasn't a question. Yes. She folded her hands. This is where your names become a problem. And Akira Kisaragi must not look absent while route confidence is fragile. Kai Marita cannot walk into South Ward without every rumor broker smelling blood. Hayate will be waiting for either mistake. I read the note again. Canal 6 disruptions. Families asking for direct assurance. If the route confidence dropped there, the 72-hour override I'd forced in the city ledger might hold on paper and still fail in practice. What do you want me to do? I asked. Sawa's answer came without pause. Go. I looked up, sure I'd misheard. With escort, hidden perimeter, and a statement plan, she said. You stand where the routes matter and confirm continuity in person before Hayate feeds panic. But you go as heir, not as a ghost from South Ward. If anyone addresses you by the wrong name in public, you do not answer first. Rules again, always rules. And Raina? I asked. Under custody. June? Also custody. Can I speak to them before I leave? No. That stung more than it should have. Why? Yeah, because you are already splitting attention between grief and systems. And the city will punish confusion faster than betrayal. Survive the night. Ask for them tomorrow. Practical, cruel. Probably correct. She stood signaling the conversation over, then stopped at the door and looked back. One more thing. If memory recoil spikes while you're in South Ward, do not touch shrine rails or old route markers without warning your escort. Civic imprints can cascade under stress. I held up my left hand. That's a sentence no normal person should hear twice in one day. In this house, Sawa said, normality is usually what kills the unprepared. After she left, I stayed in the office alone with the tea and the note until the recorder seal on the table cooled to dark glass. Outside, the estate had gone into night mode. Quieter footsteps, fewer voices, more locks. I looked at my reflection in the shutter glass. Kai's face, Akira's posture, somebody else's clauses moving around in my hands. Betrayed by my first love, yes. That part was true and not true in equal measure. She handed me over. She also bought my brother in all but blood another hour with a gun at his throat, and maybe kept half a district from collapsing into open route war, while men in coats played succession with other people's bodies. Love doesn't survive every pressure. Sometimes it mutates into damage control and shame. I hated her for it. I understood it. Both sat in me at once. Below the office window, somewhere beyond 3 courtyards and 2 walls, the city kept moving on ledgers most people would never see. Food trucks, shrine runners, smugglers with medicine, union vans, police patrols pretending not to notice side gates, kids cutting through alleys they think belong to no one. The underworld isn't only violence, it's continuity nobody writes into speeches. And somehow, by blood, theft, protocol, and a ledger that warmed to my hand, so that continuity now ran through me. On the desk, the night route packet for South Ward waited under a black seal. I didn't open it yet. I just sat there a little longer, listening to the house settle around its secrets, while somewhere below the estate, the city ledger kept turning under my pulse, and the impounded Hayate signet clicked, once, against bronze like a clock starting a countdown.